On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we dig deep into OG Anunoby's all-defense case. Should he make it? Yes. Will he make it? We'll see. Vivek Jacob from Raptors.com is here as well. We'll get to it on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1364 of Locked On Raptors for Tuesday, March the 21st. Happy spring, everybody! Oh my God, finally! We all made it. I love you all. We did it. We did it. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow the show at Locked On Raptors as well. And you can subscribe to the podcast for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Please support the show. It's free wherever you go. So you're not at risk of, having to subscribe or send any money or anything like that. You're just, with your very nice, wonderful well wishes, hitting subscribe and supporting the show and boosting the algorithm, boosting my ego. All right, on today's show, we are talking OG Anunoby and his all-defense case. A man who should have made a couple of all-defense teams already, who has yet to do it, and it's going to be tough this year. There's a lot of very, very good forwards in the mix. Every other position kind of seems like but forward is loaded. So it's going to be tricky. So we're going to try today to outline the case for OG to make all defense, run through some of the competition, come up with our final picks, and dig into all angles of OG's quest to get his first all defense nod. And we are going to do that today with Vivek Jacob of Raptors.com. Big V, are you ready to talk about OG and all those bulbous muscles that make him a very good defender against basically anyone in the NBA?
Yes, I am.
Ooh. We love to talk about those bulbous muscles. All right, so we're going to start here. We're going to dive in off the top into just the case for OG. It should be said, there is a very obvious case for OG to be an all-defense player. He is, at minimum, all-defense worthy, all-defense level, however you want to couch it. The difficulty is the lack of real estate on those all-defense teams. We'll get into the competition and whether or how OG stacks up with some of those guys a little later on in the show. But let's just begin with the case for OG. Of course, we know the sort of counting stats are there. He leads the NBA in steals per game at 2.0. He also leads the NBA, or is tied for the lead in the NBA in total steals with 114, alongside Anthony Edwards and who's the other guy? Anthony Edwards. I have it written down here. I'm very bad at my job, apparently. DeAnthony Melton, 114 total steals, yet he's played 10 fewer games than Melton and 13 fewer games than Edwards. So on the pure counting numbers, obviously very good. He's very high in block rate among wing players and all that stuff as well. The catch-all metrics really like OG. 3.2 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor versus off per cleaning the glass. That's 86th percentile among all players. Side note, Jakob Poeltl is number 1 in this stat in the entire NBA, a plus 17.2 points per 100 with him on the floor. Maybe he should make all defense next season. On dunks and threes, he is 3rd in defensive EPM, which is our pal Blake Murphy's favorite metric, I believe, for this. The catch-alls, I think everyone kind of has their preference. He's very, very good at defense, is I guess the sort of way to sum it up. There are more numbers we can dive into, but Big V, for you, when you're making the case for OG to make all defense, where do you start? How are you just imagine you're in like a court and you're making a plea to the judge of why OG. In this case, the judge is the broadcaster for the Houston Rockets who has a vote or something like that. You're making the case. How do you start it? What are you laying it?
Well, I'm starting with the numbers that you laid out. And I think even though those are obvious, those are things that matter to voters. And so I think there's a lot of voters who kind of, when it comes time to make their vote, go and see, okay, who's leading the league in steals, who's leading the league in blocks, and kind of go from there. And so when they can make those obvious reasons, then they dig into, okay, what's this guy actually done this season? And that's where I will say that you look at what the players OG Anunoby has defended over the course of the season. I think especially over the last couple weeks, it's like a perfect summary of what he does on a night in, night out basis, right? Like we saw him defend Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, Bradley Beal. And those are the guys like you expect him to defend. And then you throw in a Nikola Jokic, an Anthony Davis, a Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that shows the range of his defensive versatility, right? And we talk about what the league is becoming more and more about. He is the perfect sort of prototype of what you want in an NBA defender now. And so if that isn't good enough to make an all-defense team this season, then frankly, it's going to be pretty much impossible because I don't know what else you could do. And frankly, you are not watching if you think that Anunoby is not worthy of an all-defensive team.
That's the thing, right? It is, for me, with all defense, yes, like the catch-all numbers are great, and they give you like a pretty good, I think, sort of starting point for, all right, here are the guys you should be looking at for this. But to me, it also should maybe just come down to like, who's the scariest dude to have guarding you? And I feel like even if you just ask the players, OG would be very high on the list of dudes they don't want guarding them in, let's say, a last possession clutch time opportunity or something like that. He is single-handedly able to kind of nuke those possessions, and he's like one of the Raptors' best crunch time weapons as a result because of that. How many times has he locked up a Trae Young or Trae Young in a big spot, or, going on down the list? He's just, the other thing too that I think kind of goes in his favor is like, he's the type of player who should make you question the whole all-defense system because of that versatility you talked about, right? You got to have two guards. You got to have two forwards. You got to have a center. This is 2023, people, and positions are amorphous. Positions mean way less than they used to, and when you have a guy like OG who literally guards every position, how do you classify the position he comes in at? And so if you're like looking at the whole structure and saying, man, like this doesn't even fit the parameters of what this guy does defensively, perhaps your structure is bad and wrong and you should change it. And to that point, the versatility side of things, Crafted NBA is a good analytics site that I kind of like because it's simple. It just gives me a couple of numbers, and my easy to confuse brain really understands it. But they have a versatility metric and they have a matchup difficulty metric. And on here, OG on Crafted NBA has the fourth highest matchup difficulty in the league behind only Mikal Bridges, DeJounte Murray, and Anthony Edwards. But his versatility rating is a 98 out of 100. Bridges and Edwards are at a 78 out of 100. DeJounte's at a 48 out of 100. By the way, Kyle Lowry's versatility rating, 97. We love Kyle Lowry. But yeah, it's just he does it all. He guards anybody. He defies positions. That, to me, like, even if there's not room on the team because of the voting structure and how it goes, he's so clearly an all-defense level player. It would be a damn shame for him to not get recognized. You mentioned the steals and the sort of like the easy to see metrics and like the stuff that the people around, the normies, as you if you want to be cruel, I suppose, like the normie voting faction. And look, it's not to say that it's like a negative thing. A lot of these voters are like full-time broadcasters for their teams. They are very much absorbed in their own teams. Of course, they're going to have their own biases. They're going to have a limited scope of the rest of the league and all of that. Like, it's interesting because OG in the past has felt like he's had like the analytics darling case that doesn't really hold a lot of water. This year, it does actually feel like he might have both the analytics darling case and the just regular plebe case, which is very exciting to me. Any other sort of notes, any other little elements of OG's defense that you think are worth pitching to the judge here as we lay out the case for OG to make all D before we get into some of the competition?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would probably add is what the Raptors lineups have looked like with him. And I think when you look at the Raptors' most used lineups, right, when OG is in there with the center, I've made this point before, whether it's Jakob Poeltl or Christian Koloko, the defensive rating is pretty much top 5 in the league. For all 4 of those lineups. And so I think that is a huge case where it's like okay, pre-center, the Raptors had to ask OG to do everything, and it was like a lot of huffing and puffing and not being able to blow the house down. And now with Yak, you can blow the house down. And so I think that's a huge plus in terms of just finishing out this stretch strong. And I think that is an important aspect of it. I do think the Raptors do need to finish the season on a high and kind of being like, oh, okay, like this is really all they needed. It wasn't like a major fix to be a good team. Obviously, we know they're not a great team. They're not a contending team, but a good team should be good enough to be in that all defense mix.
Yeah, I think so too. And even kind of adding further fuel to the point you made about him not being able to blow the house down, just huffing and puffing, even when he was clearly the best defensive player and has been in that small Raptors lineup that started 20-something games for the Raptors this year, is their most used lineup at 380 minutes. That lineup has 113.3 defensive rating with no center and mostly Fred VanVleet being pretty bad at defense in a lot of those minutes. Same with Gary Trent Jr. And yet still, that would be the 12th best defense in the NBA. I think that again speaks to just how much OG ratchets up the defensive viability of any group he's in. He rocks. We're going to come back on the other side, get into some of the competition for those forward spots. And boy, oh boy, there is a lot of it. We are going to get to that in just 1 second, see how OG stacks up against Mikal Bridges and Giannis and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Evan Mobley and on down the list. We'll do that in a sec. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The tournament, the NCAA tournament, both men's and women's, are heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to three-pointers drained, and obviously those sweet, sweet upset picks, baby. You want to go through, you put a little money down on these upsets to pull out the win, you can go and do that with FanDuel. They have all the lines available for you. Super easy user interface as well. It's, usually for me, the big stumbling block to getting into sports wagering is this is confusing. There's too much stuff going on. The FanDuel site, super sleek, super easy to use. Go check them out. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and of Locked On. All right, we continue on here with Vivek Jacob of Raptors.com, digging into OG Anunoby's all-defense case. We laid out why he is very clearly an all-defense level player this season. Now we're going to lay out why it's going to be very difficult to see him actually become an all-defense player this season. On paper, still very possible. He's extremely good, but the competition is fierce. Want me to just run some names off, Big V? It's a long list. Giannis feels like a lock. The Bucks are the second best defense in the league right now, third best defense in the league right now. And, I mean, you saw it on Sunday. He's ridiculous. The combination of him and Brook Lopez, who is probably going to be the first-team center, is nasty. You throw Drew Holiday in, who should probably be a first-team guard, and it's all-encompassing defensive horror all around whenever you're trying to score on that team. Giannis is going to make it. After that, I don't think there's another lock. You can disagree, but here's the rest of the crew. OG, Mikal Bridges, Evan Mobley, Jaden McDaniels, Dylan Brooks, depending on whether you view him as a guard or as a forward. I think he's more a forward because of the Bane backcourt mostly getting the run there in Memphis. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., who could be a center, but was classified as a forward last year when he made an all-defense team. Jayson Tatum, Draymond Green as well. Am I missing anybody there, V? And if not, who do you want to maybe dive in on as like the biggest competitor to OG for those remaining three spots behind Giannis, who again we assume is a lock?
I mean, one thing I will quickly say is I love Jaden McDaniels and I think he's having a great season, but if he can kind of just have this one breakout season and make an all defense before OG Anunoby, something is wrong.
It's Matisse Thybulle level stupid. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
you can't say year after year, oh, OG like doesn't have enough of a resume, or you got to like work your way into the conversation first, and then like make the team, and then like have McDaniels all of a sudden just make it. So, very cool season that McDaniels is having. Happy to seriously consider him if he continues this next season. But for now, like, there's no way you're considering McDaniels before you consider OG.
Yeah, even if like on merit, he might honestly be as close to OG as anybody. I totally agree, though. It's just the reputation. You need a little bit more time here, I suppose. Although we'll talk about Evan Mobley. Maybe he jumps the reputation part because he's so good. But carry on.
Yeah, and in that kind of conversation, like I do think Evan Mobley might even be ahead of McDaniels, right? Because like last year he did sort of develop this great reputation, and like obviously the Cavs are winning, and the Cavs are winning even more this season,
and they have the best defense in the league by like a lot. So
so I think all of that is valid for Mobley. Mikal Bridges, obviously, it's going to come down to maybe how much they're watching Brooklyn now.
I'll cop to it. I'm not watching Brooklyn at all right now, and so I'm kind of going blind on this one.
Yeah, and so I think with Mikal Bridges, maybe it was like easier to appreciate when he was on a Phoenix team that had the best record in the West and was looking great last season, and he almost won the whole thing, right? The defensive player of the year. So I think if you look at it in terms of like that success dwindling down with Brooklyn, maybe he's not paid as much attention to. And so, yeah, I think the thing that I would like to bring up is when you look at the way voting went last year, there is a door for OG because of what's happened with both Jaren Jackson Jr. And Bam Adebayo this season.
Right.
Both of those guys made it as forwards last season. And when you look at their role this season, Jaren Jackson Jr., especially since the absence of Steven Adams, has been their center.
100%. Yeah.
And I think he spends a lot of time defending the paint. And I think that will contribute to him being viewed as a center this year if he makes the all-defense team. Because, again, if he is in that center spot, that center's position is stacked, right?
Yeah.
If you move Bam Adebayo to center, where he's played there a lot more than he did last season as well, now you're looking at a battle between, Brook Lopez, Jared Allen, Nick Claxton, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid. Center position is going to be insane, right? And then there's the two guys who we're used to seeing. Well, one guy we're very used to seeing because he's made 5 straight all-defense first teams, Rudy Gobert. He's probably not going to make it this season.
Yeah, he feels like the kind of guy who, like, the first second there's an opportunity to not vote for him, the voters will be like, finally.
Yeah. And then you got Robert Williams, who had a great season last season. Boston had a great defense, but this season he just hasn't played enough games. So those are two centers who are moving out, right? So all those guys moving into the center position, I think that opens up the forward spot. So I think that's kind of what makes it more plausible for OG as well.
Yeah, I was looking into the numbers on Jackson per cleaning the glass as far as like where he spent his time. You can kind of put in for, hey, he was playing center versus power forward. They have it as like 1,900 minutes as a power forward versus like or 1,900 possessions as a power forward versus like 1,200 as a center. I just don't buy that, honestly. Like, I feel like the way I think about the Grizzlies is anytime there's no Steven Adams, he's the center. I know Xavier Tillman's in there and stuff like that, and Brandon Clark is, kind of an amorphous big as opposed to a power forward or a center. But like, Jaren Jackson's the center. He to me should make an all-defense team one way or another. If he makes forward, he probably deserves it over OG, honestly, just because he's so ridiculous on that end. But if he can slide over to center, that's really good news for OG for sure. As far as this is a really fascinating question because we mentioned all the guys. I mean, Draymond, it should be said. I know Draymond is like everyone's, he's one of the best defensive players of all time, obviously, but not been his banner season defensively. The Warriors are 18th in defense. And as far as like the versatility and matchup difficulty goes, I mentioned OGs got an 86 matchup difficulty out of 100 and a 98 versatility out of 100. On Crafted NBA, Draymond 51 versatility out of 167 matchup difficulty. So like less versatility, less difficulty of matchup. He's been very impactful as like a singular defender, but it's not really translated to team defensive success. Even though they're kind of in the same range as the Raptors are in terms of the overall defensive standings, kind of in that mucky middle. I don't know if Draymond really has the case, especially considering the Warriors have been so like publicly up and down and all over the place. And maybe you punch your teammate in the face, you take a year off from awards. I'm not sure how the voters are going to view that one either. Let me frame it as this question. Like you're drafting one of these guys for a single game against a not named opponent. OG's going pretty high in that list, right? Just because of the way he can guard anybody. Like, you could be playing Jokic. You could be playing Damian Lillard. You could be up against anybody. OG gives you, like, the best coverage at all those spots, right? Should that not maybe factor into the decision-making here?
It should. I don't know that it will.
Well, it's not like a question they get asked on their polls, so I doubt it will, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's certain guys who do view it that way. I think even with the MVP, right, there are people who kind of debate it as like, hey, we're playing 5-on-5 and we're picking teams on the court. Like, who are you picking, Joel Embiid or Jokic, right? And so in the same way, if you're on the street, you're picking a team, you're probably picking OG before a whole bunch of guys, right? I'm not sure they kind of view it that way. I think with Draymond, it will probably end up being a legacy vote. I think, we saw something similar happen with LeBron last season, right?
Yeah.
I think if you were to just take away the name, I don't think LeBron would have made an all-NBA team.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Butler probably makes it ahead of him. And so I think something similar will happen with Draymond here, where we know what he's capable of at his ceiling. And obviously they've been absolutely phenomenal at home. And so I think people will probably just look at the road and say, hey, that's on the young guys who haven't figured it out yet. And sort of, not hold that against Draymond.
The voting for this is so stupid, man. It's like my favorite award to think about because I actually think like it's interesting in a way that the MVP is just not to me. Like, I don't care, couldn't possibly care who wins it. They're all very, very good players. All defense feels, I think it's because of the exclusivity probably. There's only two teams, but that's kind of the problem. Is that there shouldn't be room for legacy sympathy votes because of there's only 4 spots at forward. You can't just be handing them out like candy to dudes who have done it in the past. I think that sucks. And if you're going on merits, I think OG has been a vastly better defender than Draymond this season. It's maybe vastly is putting it strongly, but he's been better and doing it under more difficult circumstances. The voting for this, especially considering it's the media too, right? Where it's just like no one can watch all of these games unless you're Zach Lowe. No one's watching these games in that much depth across the entire NBA. Do you have a preferred voter setup? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, I was also just going to quickly add, voters might just also be terrified of Draymond going on a tirade on his podcast if he does.
Oh no, a podcast tirade! Oh, spooky.
But sorry, what was your question?
Like, if you had your druthers, who would vote on this award?
I would be curious to see what it would look like if you did like a split vote where it was a percentage to media, percentage to players, percentage to coaches. Sort of similar to All-Star, but obviously exclude the fans because I think this is kind of way too serious.
Yeah, there's money on the line. There's super maxes and stuff on the line.
Yeah.
Don't leave this to the morons who vote Derrick Rose as the 6th best guard every year.
Yeah. And also, that's also not to say that media should have as much as they say that they do in these contracts, right? And so I think I would be curious to see what it would look like if you kind of had it split 3 ways. I don't know if it should be a third, but I would be curious to see how different the voting shakes out that way.
Here's an idea. You go, let's say 30% media. 30% media. You get all 30 coaches, all 30 head coaches in there, so you get 30. And then you take the top 40 scorers in the NBA, and they have to vote. Get the guys who have the ball in their hands the most and have them say which guys scare them the most on defense. I feel like that might be the most indicative way. And
I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might be onto something with
Fixing problems here on the pod.
Yeah, and man, I would be curious to not even so much like necessarily the scorers, but I think even like point guards in general would have a good idea.
Sure.
Just because they're the ones running the offense and whatnot.
They're the ones cowering when large people hang over top of them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I'm sure like Trae Young would have a lot to say about OG's defense, right? Like he's seen it firsthand. So
he might vote Precious Achiuwa all defense in that case.
But I think you're on the right track with that idea.
Fixing problems, NBA, ring me up. What's up? If anyone with league ties listens to this, you're free to send my ideas to the NBA if you'd like. We're going to come back on the other side, get into our official picks for all defense as it stands right now with 10 or so games left, and also examine the question, if OG gets snubbed this year, it'll probably be the biggest snub he's ever received. But what's the biggest snub he's received in the past? We'll close out the show with that. Give our all defense teams in just one sec. But first, a reminder, go make your second listen of the day when you're done here. Locked On Leafs, as the Buds continue to be very good. They're probably going to lock up that 2 seed in the Atlantic Division. And Mike DiStefano and Dave Morisuti are doing a great job covering that team each and every day. On all the same places you find this podcast, you can go and find Locked On Leafs as well. 5 days a week. Go check them out. All right. Big V. It's time. Let's put our teams together. I've put together 2 sets of teams. One is the one I think will happen. The other one is the one I would like to see happen, featuring a little bit of chicanery on my end with positional flexibility and whatnot. Curious if you want to go first here. Lay out your first and second team and where OG slots in on those. What you got?
Actually, I'm curious to hear what you think the team will look like.
So I think the teams, I'm worried Jaren Jackson's still going to be a forward because he was a forward last year and because Steven Adams is there. And so I'm putting Jaren on the first team. My first team is Alex Caruso, Drew Holiday, Giannis, Jaren Jackson, and Brook Lopez. You can quibble, I guess, with having $3 on the first team, but have you seen the Bucks play defense? I think that's fine. The second team I have Derek White, who by all the metrics has been much better than Marcus Smart defensively this season. DeAnthony Melton, OG Anunoby, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen is my second team. I don't feel great about it, but that's what I've got. You missed Tatum. He's been very good, obviously. Maybe had a bit of a drop-off in the second half after he was locking everybody's ass up in the first part of the season. Mikal Bridges, obviously. Mikal is, I think, the guy I think of when I do you're picking one defender to guard a team that you don't know yet. And I feel like OG over Bridges, I would take OG's strength and extra versatility over Bridges, so I knock him there. Draymond, I'm leaving off. I don't really care. I would like to move Jaren to center. I just don't know if I totally buy it. If I did move Jaren to center, I'd probably bump Allen off the second team, move Jaren to second team center, and then swap Mobley to first team maybe because they are really good defense, and then put in one of Tatum or Bridges or hell, Jaden McDaniels. What do you have for your teams?
So at the guards, I've actually got Derek White and Drew Holiday both on my first team.
Right on.
I think,
Should be said, the guards suck this year. There's not a lot to choose from. There's like 5 guys with a good case, I would say.
The depth
And
sucks, but the guards who are in are very, very good.
Fred, yes. Fred picked an awful year, let's just say, to have a really, really bad first half on defense, because he probably would have had a very good shot at it had he played the way he has for the last 15 games, let's say.
Yeah. So I've got Derek White and Drew Holiday on the first team. I've got Giannis and OG as my 2 forwards.
Hell yeah. First team all D, you heard it here. You're a Raptors employee. I think that counts as NBA canon now.
And I've got Brook Lopez as my center.
Yeah, I think that's chalk. He's ridiculous, man. God.
Yeah. He's insane. Then, I mean, it feels very weird to not have Jaren Jackson Jr. on the first team. But it is what it is. Get those road numbers up, man.
Yeah, that's true. You start slipping some bucks to those stat keepers in Minneapolis or whatever.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, it was basically a toss up between Jaren and Brook, and I just went with Brook.
Yeah.
Second team, I've got Alex Caruso. I've got Jimmy Butler, which might be a bit unpopular. Probably, and I think this comes down to what you said about the depth, right? It was between him. There's Marcus Smart, and I guess Dylan Brooks as well.
No Melton for you? No consideration there?
Melton is in the mix as well. And
he's got the counting plus advanced catch-all metric case as well. He's doing quite well in those departments.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Melton is probably worthy. Maybe, again, like I'm kind of looking at it as like, you know, where's the conversation been as a whole?
Sure.
Like previous years as well.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Jimmy Butler guy, and just went with him.
You know who wishes they were big Jimmy Butler guys is anyone on the Sixers.
Yep.
Or the Wolves, or the Bulls. You know, he's good. He's very good.
Yeah. And then, believe it or not, after making the case that both Jaren and Bam should be centers, I do have them. I'm putting one of them in as a forward, whichever one you want, you can put in there.
Sure.
Because I've got Bam, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Draymond Green. I went with the reputation a little bit.
So no Evan Mobley. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I feel like he maybe should be a lock. I hate how good Evan Mobley is.
He is awesome.
I mean, I love watching him play. It makes
we need an all-defense third team.
That's the thing, is that there 100% should be a third team. Maybe that makes it less exclusive, but also it's really hard to make it no matter what. And this is an award for dudes in most cases, you know, Giannis not included, who are never going to win big time hardware, I think, at like the very highest level. And so, yeah, there should be more room for those guys to get some little notch on their basketball reference page that they made an all-defense team. That would be nice. Matisse Thybulle. The fact that Matisse Thybulle made it again makes me want to scream. He made it twice, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, if you had to we don't need to go through our dream teams. I think we've covered it pretty well. I did find a way to finagle OG in as a guard on my dream team next to Alex Caruso on the first team, because he's a shooting guard now, right? That's basically where he plays. I know they list him as a small forward. He's the shooting guard on the Raptors right now. Have you seen all the shooting he's doing? That's enough. Case done. So yeah, I have my dream team is OG, Giannis, Mobley, and Brook, and then Holiday, Melton, McDaniels, Bridges, Jaren as my second team. But that's just pie in the sky stuff. Let me ask you, Big V. OG in the past had 2 second-team votes back in 2019-20 when the Raptors were the number 2 defense in the league and got no all-defense love, despite being the team about which 1,000 think pieces were written as they changed NBA defense. Changes that I think are still kind of around the league today. He, last year, had 1 second-team vote. Somehow Scotty Barnes got more second-team votes than him last season with 2. It's wild. People not watching, I guess. What year? It could be a different year. You know, obviously Tampa was kind of a wash. He was a bench guy back in 2018-19. He was a very good defensive player as a rookie, maybe not all defense worthy. But what year to you is the biggest egregious OG snub for all defense?
Yeah, I'll probably go with that 2019-20 season. I thought he was phenomenal. And I think, you know, when you look at the games played as well, 69, started 68 of them. I think he had a really good case. I think maybe, you know, that would have been the year that people kind of looked at and said he's kind of brought himself back into the picture just because of the way 2018-19 went.
Sure.
And so kind of didn't give him the credit that he deserved. And, you know, like at the end of the day, it is kind of a Toronto thing, right? Like you look at the love Boston got last year. And, you know, at the end of the year, no one was saying, oh, the team defense is so good. I don't know who to individually give credit to. But yet, when the Raptors defense was that good, it was like, that was the case, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was really unfair to the Raptors as a whole. And OG suffered from it for sure.
Gasol was maybe their like best candidate, but he didn't play enough games, I would say, that year. Yeah. So to me, that is the big one. I don't know if you have a different one. I think it's last year for me, mostly because you look at the 2019-20 team and the forwards are Giannis, Anthony Davis, Kawhi, and Bam Adebayo. All right, fair enough. Even though maybe Kawhi has kind of... The fact that he got an all-defense... He's the only guy to get an all-defense when he was like the 5th best defender on that championship team is still hilarious. And again, speaks to the whackness of the voting. Last season, again, your forwards are Giannis and Jaren Jackson Jr. Fine. Bam is your another one. And then Matisse Thybulle gets in there, a guy who was listed as a guard, was actually kind of a forward. I don't really know why they made those distinctions. I mean, yeah, it was Draymond and Bam were actually the forwards. I just feel like if you can make room for Matisse as a guard, you can make room for OG as a guard and actually kind of... It's just the voting is stupid. Robert Williams also made the center. Maybe that should have been Draymond or Bam, and maybe Williams gets bumped. Very frustrating. I think last year, anytime Matisse Thybulle makes it and OG does not, I think that's just a great indignity in NBA history. But that's me. Any last parting shots here on OG's all-defense case before we round up the show?
Yeah, I mean, again, if they could make the case for Matisse, where your offense is so bad you can't even be on the floor when the game matters most, you can make the case for OG this season.
100%. And yeah, I guess it's not as egregious with Draymond and Bam being technically the forwards, but still, hate it. Actually, Matisse getting the guard spot over Fred is maybe even more egregious last year, considering Fred is
that was
an all-star and Matisse is a maybe NBA player 2 years from now. We'll see.
Yeah, that's why I went with 2019-20 because like Fred just missed out last season, and that should have been his spot.
You might be right. Yeah, you're right. I will revise my take. It was 2019-20 where the Raptors should have had somebody, if not multiple somebodies, and had nobody. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. NBA people out there, random broadcasters, vote for OG, please. I know you listen to the podcast when you're recording, when you're doing a national game, Doris Burke. I know that happens. Please spread the good word. OG is certainly an all-defense level player. Big V, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff at raptors.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob.
Hell yeah. Everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Just spam various voters in your markets if you listen to this episode and you want them to hear some intel on why OG is worth voting for, all that good stuff. If you don't want to do that, you can just leave ratings and reviews and subscribe. That's also much appreciated. We love you very much for doing that. And we will talk to you again tomorrow, as we're going to chat with Tony East of Locked On Pacers, everybody's favorite namesake of a gentleman's club formerly in Scarborough, Tony's East. Without question, every single time Tony's on the show, someone who used to visit Tony's East comments in the comment section asking if Tony is the owner of Tony's East. I'm very excited to have Tony on the show again so I can interact with those weird commenters. We also got Katie Heindel later this week. We got a game to break down on Thursday, as well as the Raptors take on the Pacers, and we will leave it all there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.